welcome to Libertarian Counterpoint. I am your host, James Just. With me is my favorite author and yours, Mr. John Cameron.
Well, howdy there, James.
How you doing, John?
Doing well.
Yeah, how was your Thanksgiving? Nice, quiet, peaceful Thanksgiving?
Wonderful. Yeah. I didn't have to cook. I ate myself into a stupid, which is just past stupor. Once you force your way through stupor, you go to stupid. Got to see my lovely daughter.
Yeah. Well, John, you're talking about eating yourself into stupid, and I am dressed as a Christmas theme, and our current president, Mr. Joe Biden, is in the giving mood. He has decided to hand out a pardon despite his...
The first of many coming.
Despite his declarations that he wouldn't, to his son, Hunter Biden. And I'm going to be perfect. If I was in this position, I'd have done the same damn thing, just from a father's perspective, just as a father. Of course I would have. Now, I didn't tell the world I wouldn't. So, so there's that.
I suggest what a good parent would have done is what you do with children who are train wrecks is tough love. You make them spend a little time in prison or jail if that's what it's going to take to straighten them out.
Well, the problem is he had used them, so you can't really do that after you've used them as a go-between.
Took a shower with his teenage daughter and had her put in an institution, so...
Yeah, I'm just saying, as a father, I understand. From a father's perspective, I understand it.
Yeah,
I completely understand.
I am a father, and quite frankly, if my beloved daughter, who I disagree with on many things, was gonna get put in jail because she's a itty bitty beautiful young girl, she wouldn't do well in prison. She's mean as a snail. She's not, but I would consider doing things. But as a politician, no, the man is senile anyway. So, but it was politically stupid, and there's no way you can whitewash it and make it not politically stupid. But the real bummer about it is that they're now talking about him doing pardoning all these people for the crimes they might have committed because the Republicans are going to go after them. Well, the neat thing about a pardon is that a pardon means, if you're pardoned, it means that you've basically accepted the fact that you are guilty of a crime. You can't pardon a non-crime, folks. So all these people, they as they were trying to throw Trump in prison, I said to the American people, you have to have faith in the justice system of the United States to come to the right conclusion, folks. However, since their people have been guilty of way past skullduggery, a little fraud, a little deceit, throwing away 17 hours of tape of the incursion into chambers of Congress, like who let them in, those sorts of things.
Oh yeah, sure. Like how many assets did they have in the crowd?
All those kinds of things. If you are confident in the system of American justice, as you told people that you should be, as Trump was railroaded through all of these lawfare trials, then why do you need to pardon those people, folks?
Yeah. Well, as Charlemagne the God pointed out on his podcast, he says, just stop pretending that you're the moral high ground.
Yeah.
Just stop pretending. Says, we all know that you're not.
Yeah.
Stop pretending that you're more moral than everybody else. Stop pretending that you don't lie. Stop pretending that you don't cheat. You're just like all the people you complain about. And so just stop. It's the hypocrisy that's actually the bigger issue here than the issue itself.
The hypocrisy and the fact that this is obvious, an obvious example of at least two-tiered class system in this United States of America. If you're part of the powerful, especially from the deep state part of the powerful, the people that believe in huge government and that government's perfect, you're not held accountable. And you'll notice that all the attacks on Trump's potential people in his new administration, they're attacking them on moral grounds. Like, you know, they might not be as nice to women, or they could have got drunk, or they could have used drugs. I don't know what comedian said it, but he said, well, you know, why Republicans don't attack the Democrats on moral grounds, because nobody thinks they have any. So, again, that's why I want less government. That's why libertarians want less government. You can't give people this kind of power and expect them not to abuse it.
Well, I've said before, John, if it wasn't for the Democrat Party, if it wasn't for hypocrisy, they'd have no values at all. And so that's just kind of where we're standing.
I like that line. I'll steal it.
And so we're actually going to move on here to California. You know, California has decided that they are going to stand up to Trump, and they're holding right now a special sessions to allocate $25 million.
Is that one of his cost us taxpayers $200,000 for his personal photographer pictures? Looks like it.
It probably is. It wouldn't surprise me, or if it's an AP picture. But either way, they're sitting there. They're down there. They're down at the Capitol. They're having a special sessions to try to insulate and prepare for lawsuits against the incoming Trump administration. But I'd like to point out, if they can bring up the next slide on here, that California has shifted red a huge chunk. Right? On the left, you've got the map from 2020, and on the right, you got the map of counties that voted for Trump on 2024. So all these, you're actually trying to isolate California from the people who don't like you. I mean, they're not even pretending to represent people who aren't Democrats anymore. They're just not even pretending. But yet somehow, I don't think they pretended in a very, very long time. I think they've basically just laughed at you know, the fact that an awful lot of people don't want them to do what they do. You know, that's simple. So where do the people like?
And once you gerrymander a state like this, look at those boundaries there.
Look, if you live in the red state, if you live in those red counties, and you're a Trump supporter, you're not feeling represented.
No.
Now, what if you're here in Sacramento? You're like us. You're a libertarian. You're in Sacramento. nobody's representing you. No. There's nobody in any with any institutional power who is representing you, and those people who are supposed to represent you, they're not. They're clearly not. They're out there literally fighting the very things. They're not even pretending to listen to you.
And here's what's interesting about this. Nobody in the right mind believed before the election that Trump could win in California. So basically, people cast their vote knowing he wouldn't win anything, and he won some stuff. So how many people, in hindsight, how many more people would have showed up and voted for him if they thought there was a possibility to shift 2 or 3 more of these congressional districts?
Well, and if you live in San Francisco, if you're a Republican, why would you even bother voting?
Why would you bother voting? Yeah.
Well, why would you even bother?
Marin County, Sacramento County.
Yeah. Why would you even bother? So that's where we sit here in California. We've got the California Democrats who run the state, lock, stock, and barrel, actually literally telling anybody who isn't a Democrat that not only are we not going to pretend to represent you, we're going to actively fight your interests. That's what they're saying.
And if it sounds like we're Republicans here, folks, we're not by any stretch of the imagination. We just like the democratic process.
Yeah, we like the Democrat process, not the Democrat Party.
Yeah.
And we don't like the Republican Party either. So, but Mr. Richard Fields has a wider perspective this week. He's looking at the state of the world, and you know, he's thinking that maybe we're closer to World War III than we all think. Let's hear what Richard has to say this week.
Love to.
This is Richard Fields with this week's Report from the Fields. Hopefully, this won't be the last report from the fields. I say that because in my 77-year lifetime, I have never seen humanity this close to World War III. And a nuclear World War III could conceivably mean the end of the human race itself. I don't remember seeing this many Cold Wars simmering and hot wars escalating simultaneously in my lifetime. South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol declared martial law, accusing opposition parties of sympathizing with communist North Korea. The Korean parliament lifted the declaration and police carried out the wishes of parliament. Luckily, President Yoon saw the light and repealed his martial law edict. In the country of Georgia, which used to be part of the Soviet Union, non-governmental organizations, NGOs, are staging violent protests against the elected Russia-aligned Georgian Dream Party because the Dream Party is slow walking its entry of Georgia into the European Union. It appears to be a similar scenario to the 2014 Maidan revolution in Ukraine, which overthrew the elected Russia-aligned government in favor of a government interested in joining NATO. The Maidan revolution was also run by NGOs financed in part by the CIA. We are now seeing what that resulted in. In the Middle East, Israel is conducting a very hot war against Hamas in Gaza and Hezbollah in Lebanon. Both are backed and supplied with arms by Iran. Meanwhile, the Houthis, also backed by Iran, operating out of Yemen, are effectively shutting down shipping in the Suez Canal and the Red Sea. The U.S. Biden administration cannot seem to figure out which side it's on. It's simultaneously supplying Israel with arms and telling them to be nicer to the civilians in Gaza and Lebanon. It seems not to have even considered not taking a side. In the same neighborhood, a hot war continues between the government and rebels in Sudan, and rebels in Syria have captured Aleppo, the largest city in Syria. Syria is allied with Russia. All this is mostly background noise to what is happening in Ukraine. So far, I mentioned the Maidan Revolution. That's when the U.S. reneged on its promise not to invite Ukraine to join NATO. Ukraine and Georgia border Russia, so fomenting a coup so we could invite them to join NATO, a military alliance between Western European countries and the U.S., is akin to the Soviets putting nuclear missiles in Cuba back in the 60s. We put an end to that. Russia is putting an end to Ukraine being in NATO. In the final days of the Biden administration, or given Biden's compromised mental faculties, his advisors are dramatically escalating the war in Ukraine. We supplied ATACMS missiles to Ukraine, capable of penetrating 190 miles into Russia. They were used. We gave them landmines and cluster bombs. That's in addition to artillery, anti-armor systems, tanks, and drones. The Biden administration is speeding up the delivery of all kinds of weapons in the war because of the fear that the incoming Trump administration will put a stop to it all. In doing so, we are critically depleting our own stores of weapons and ammunition with limited manufacturing facilities to replace them quickly. Putin has responded with his own escalation. He fired a hypersonic Oreshnik missile into Dnipro, causing huge kinetic damage. It is a missile capable of carrying a nuclear warhead. Its Mach 11 speed makes it probably invulnerable to our anti-missile defense systems. Putin threatened to use it against Warsaw, London, Paris, and other NATO capitals if NATO countries keep escalating their assistance to Ukraine. All of those capitals are within 15, 20 minutes of Russia by the Mach 11 speed of the Oreshnik. He's also brought in North Korean troops as cannon fodder. Meanwhile, China is biding its time and making bellicose noises about reclaiming sovereignty over Taiwan. We did nothing when they took over Hong Kong. Will we make good on promises to protect Taiwan? If so, our vaunted aircraft carriers may be sitting ducks for hypersonic missile attacks. The smart thing to do would be for the U.S. to recognize its days of empire are over, relinquish our delusions, and become a peaceful nation like, Italy, Great Britain, the Netherlands, Germany, Portugal, and all the other empires who are no more. Much better than the possible alternative of nuclear Armageddon. That's this week's report from the fields. I'm Richard Fields. See you again next week.
And thank you, Richard.
Well spoken.
I'm personally not a lot worried about the potentials of a World War III. It doesn't make sense for any of the people who would be involved. It just doesn't.
Well, actually, I think we're probably already in World War III.
Yes, well, I mean a nuclear World War III.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, and the thing about a nuclear, I'm not saying I want to be in a nuclear war, folks. I'm just, quite frankly, glad that McClellan and Mather are no longer active military bases. You know, all this stuff about the planet's not going to survive and the world won't survive, and the minute the first nuclear bomb goes off, that'll be the end because we'll fire all of them. Yeah, that's even if everybody fired every weapon on the planet, the planet would be a nasty place. You know, lots of people would starve to death, and you know the race would survive, and maybe they would learn never to trust governments again. I'm not saying it's a good thing.
Well, it's interesting. Yeah. The modern nuclear weapon actually doesn't have the radiation problem that the original ones do.
Well, in order to, you know, this thing about, you know, all the sci-fi books and all the rest of that, where this bomb crater hits and you can't go there for, you know, thousands of years, that's hogwash. You know, I mean, the worst nuclear power plant disaster in the world was in a Soviet-designed nuclear power plant in the Ukraine. And they were talking about, you know, all the people are going to die and all the cancer and the mutations and all the rest of that stuff. Turns out the radiation that Europe suffered was like I think, what, 10% increase in like background radiation. I mean, and all the mutations they thought were going to happen didn't happen. People who went in to fight the fire, about 40 of them died. But a lot of people, even with pretty heavy doses of radiation, survived. Some greater increases in cancer. Anyway, I don't want to inundate people with facts, but I'm not saying it's a good thing. But you know, maybe people will realize that you shouldn't let fools be in power. These are the powers that we let be, folks, not the powers that be. It's not like they came down from the temple with stone tablets and they had this power. We let them have this power. Don't let these clowns have this power. Don't let these clowns build these huge armies. Don't let these clowns interfere with other clowns' business. You know, it's actually pretty simple.
Yeah, they take that money from your pocket to make all those weapons and to go off and impose the rule.
Mostly they print it. Yeah.
Well, they print it, and then you have to go out and work to pay for it.
Yeah.
That's what happens.
Yeah.
So speaking of your taxpayer money, U.S. taxpayers are funding police brutality in Brazil. They've essentially spent a lot of taxpayer money to go in and train Brazilian police in modern police procedures, and the Brazilian police are essentially abusing their subjects, their citizens, with that training and tactics. And of course, we know this. We have seen this happen, rinse and repeat in Central and South America time and time and time again. I mean,
we wonder why people down there get, can I say, pissed off on camera?
Well, you just did.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, and it's pretty bad, folks. The FBI and the CIA and even some California police departments have provided anti-riot training and basically SWAT training and all the rest of this to people. They have a huge gang and crime problem, and unfortunately many of the gangs are run by senior police officials. It is corruption like you only get in California. I mean, maybe even worse. And what's hilarious is they're getting anti-riot training from some of the places in the U.S. where the police blissfully watched crowds burn down the middle of many cities in the name of I don't know what, right? Just watch them burn. So it's not effective training. It's brutal. They're teaching people how to do torture and hard interrogation, stuff that would be patently illegal in our country, yet they're teaching other people, provide them with military-grade weaponry to fire on their citizens. The police in Brazil have killed, according to their numbers, 7,000 civilians last year. The real number is probably more like 5 times that many. So, and we're funding this stuff. and we're supporting NGOs with government dollars that are supporting the, I forget his name, Loco, it's not that, is it Lula? What's his name? Anyway,
yes,
Brazilian
like
president's censorship of his people. They're not even basically allowed to use Twitter.
Yeah, we're not even spreading our values.
For that.
We're spending a bunch of taxpayer money, and we're not even spreading our values. We're spreading the values of tin pot dictators instead of the value of a modern democratic state that focuses on human rights. What have we done? Where are we going? It makes no sense, but yet that is what we continue to do.
We keep doing this, and I do not know why. Because they're socialist. Why would they support a fascist? I just don't understand it. It makes no sense, and unless what they want is chaos, which I'm starting to suspect that's the goal.
Well, what they want is control, and they don't really care how they get it. But we're speaking about stuff that makes no sense or didn't make any sense. Alito has called out a Solicitor General for ignoring research that exposed the risks to young people who are going through the trans procedures. Right? There's a case up at the Supreme Court right now about, is it Tennessee? I believe it's Tennessee, has a ban on trans surgeries for minors. I believe is where it's actually fairly narrow, right? It's only minors, and it's actually rarely and only surgery.
You mean like the rest of the civilized world?
Yeah, like Europe returned to. That's the thing, right? Europe, who jumped early on the transition,
and then jumped right off within weeks, because with the first studies, all the studies that came out did not support it. All the stuff about trans kids suiciding, wrong. Yes, some do. They said, oh, well, a lot of them think about it. Lots of people think about suicide, they don't do it. It doesn't matter if they're, trans or monks.
And here's the thing, John. When they first started the transitioning students, transitioning people, it was very difficult. And so it was actually quite successful, because most of the time the treatments on the way to getting it would catch them off.
It was adults, too. Yes. It wasn't children.
And so it was very successful, because only 1 in 20, 1 in 40, 1 in 50 made it to the actual end point of the procedure. Everybody else was helped along the way. But what they did is they circumvented that thing. They started, rather than going through all the difficulty, they said, well, people shouldn't have to go through the difficulty. But what they realized is the actual treatment was in that difficulty. And anybody who made it through that difficulty really needed the treatment. They were going to have a high chance of success. But even them didn't always have a high chance of success.
No, there's an awful lot of adults who've transitioned years ago who were regretful.
A famous musician has just recently come out and who is detransitioning, and he's coming out. And you feel for them, right? Because they said no one protected me, and no one told me all the.
There's no going back. They say that the drugs that, I mean, it's heartbreaking to see these people who, when you're growing up and you hit puberty, I don't know anybody that's gone through it without it making them a little bit crazy. And if you don't have a good support network, and then somebody hints to you, the reason, and these people were led to these decisions. That's what upsets me. That the reason you're having problems is you think you should be a girl. We can make you a girl. Or the reason you're upset is you should be a boy. We can make you a boy. You can't, folks.
Yeah. Well, and here's what I want to be clear. I know people who the process has saved their lives.
Yeah.
And so I'm not.
I do not know any of those.
I am not against the process.
For adults.
For adults.
Yeah.
I am not against the process. I have no problems with adults can do their own thing. Even if it fails them, they can do it. But I have seen it save people's lives. I've also seen people who have destroyed. And the problem is we're not having the full conversation. That's the real travesty. Is we have refused to have the full conversation. In an effort to protect people, we have harmed others. And that is.
And not only that, as is usual with American medicine, folks, that we're only one. Not that I care about this, but just food for thought. We're one of only two countries in the whole world that allow pharmaceutical companies to advertise directly to consumers. We let people. It's crazy. You won't let a kid buy cigarettes. You won't let a kid drive. You won't let a kid. Anymore. You won't let a kid walk to school on his own without jailing his mother. But you will convince him that he needs to have radical mental and physical altering chemical treatment and perhaps surgery and hide it from his parents?
That's the problem.
That's
the problem.
insane.
All right, well, the Department of Education, its mere existence is a threat to our children. Now, I pointed this out early for a number of years. I actually have a browser tab saved as a study that's, early academic training produces long-term psychological harms. It's a known fact. It's been known for 15 years. But yet, we still try to put early education, despite the fact that we know it's harmful. And that is the problem with things like the Department of Education, is they don't know how to stop.
Well, there's another thing that's bad about it. It's federal money, and it only takes like 1 or 2% extra money to a school district from the federal government to completely control their curriculum. So, if you have, what's her name, Weingarten, the head of the biggest teachers union in this country, many people have called her the greatest threat to democracy in this country. Once you get people in power there with some very strange ideas about what you should be teaching kids, and then you start handing out money, and these school districts with their inflated huge budgets and massive pensions and huge bureaucracies, they'll go grab that money, and then they are then told what to do. Parents should tell schools what to do, not somebody in Washington, D.C. And so, and then, basically they're a front for the socialists anyway. Everything they send out has to have a message, and it has strings attached to it.
Every federal dollar has strings, and those strings are longer and more varied than any of us know.
Yeah.
And that's the real problem. And, you've got, there are desires other than the basic education of your child within the education department, and that has created a vast, vast issue. John, we got like 30 seconds. You got anything to close this out on?
No, I just want to say that thank goodness we can still speak in this country, and that we have the Second Amendment, and that people are starting to realize that people didn't vote for Trump. They voted against. Trump's a lunatic, and he still won against. People are fed up. They're starting to see the light. Thank goodness, and hopefully this show has had a little bit to do with that. I'm grateful.
Yeah, the election was more of a saying on the deep state, on the bureaucratic state, than it was on Trump or Kamala Harris or Republicans or Democrats.
Not mentioned at all in mainstream press.
All right. Thank you for watching us, John. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. Thank the crew inside for working so hard. Have a good night. And please remember to love everybody, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you very much, James. I really appreciate it. I enjoyed the show tonight.